I'm on a whole mission. I got assigned this morning. I got the assignment yesterday. Assigned to go to 2 different locations for 2 different jobs. Little quick sampling jobs. Easy. All the way out here in the IE. Went to Kinder Morgan Colton, and then I went to MHX Fontana. What I'm really talking about though is the mission of life. My life is a mission, and it is a mission to drive all the way out here to the IE. But the reason why I'm talking about I'm on a mission is because while I'm on this drive, I have time to think. I have time to think about my life. And in summary, I think it's important to understand that I see my life as a mission. So I have a underlying desire to maximize my productivity. And I noticed that desire. And I think the more that I lock myself in, the more that I focus on getting things done, the more I desire to maximize my productivity. It's very interesting. So, in other words, the more productive I am, the more productive I want to be. That's very, very interesting to think about. I don't think I'm the only one. I think it's a human thing. But when I say I see my life as a mission, right? That is a perspective. When I say I have an underlying desire to maximize my productivity, I'm talking about a feeling. So, underlying desire. The desire is this feeling that I have. Now, where does that perspective that my life is a mission come from? Where does the feeling of desiring to maximize my productivity, where does that come from, that feeling? All right, so as a mature adult, I have been able to reflect and figure out where that stuff is coming from. And it's spiritual. It's spiritual. So it takes a lot of like internal work to arrive at this realization about what's really important. And instead of giving you the words that helped bring me to clarity on this, I want to share what I'm learning from this book called The Purpose-Driven Life. It's kind of got 2 titles. What on earth am I here for? It's written by Rick Warren, Purpose-Driven Life. And I've read it before, but I'm reading it again, and I think it's important to study these things in order to maintain like my spiritual health. So I haven't put too much focus on spirituality in like over the last year. In the last few months, I have been putting some more focus. But one thing I've really been doing is making sure I study those things, meditate, journal. Kind of never. Real quick note. I didn't feel like I was losing too much spirituality, but when I say I hadn't been focused on it too much over the past year, I mean like I hadn't been focused on boosting up my spirituality. I think I was feeling like I was at a good place spiritually, but my feelings told me other things were more important to attend to fix. A big thing that happens in a man's life is becoming a father and being very involved, figuring out how to be like the man of the house. And a great father, a great husband is something that I want to make sure I'm doing in life. And I think there's a lot of other more physical, maybe mental, emotional things that I was working on that didn't let me boost my own spirituality. Now, I was okay. I didn't feel like I lost a whole bunch of spirituality, but I do believe you're always growing or you're like diminishing. And so it takes effort to maintain the same. And so the very little effort that I was putting was only to maintain my level of spirituality in life. And then I would at times diminish in spirituality, which is which is the real problem for me personally. But I couldn't necessarily see that because it wasn't a whole lot of spiritual work that I needed to do. Okay, so that's just a quick tangent, bringing it back to the main topic here. The perspective that my life is a mission, and the feeling that I want to try to like be super productive all the time and get stuff done is coming from a spiritual place where I want to make impact on the world. I want to make impact on people. And in the book, The Purpose-Driven Life, the whole premise of it all is that we do not find our purpose by looking inward to ourselves. We kind of find it by looking outward. But maybe a better way to say it is we find our purpose in life by looking upward and to God. I'm not trying to have a whole talk about God and faith necessarily. I'm just trying to say what I got from the book. And when the book says this, the message, the main message there can be interpreted even without the word God, without the Christian concept of God. It can be understood by an atheist. So I'm going to say it a little differently than the book says it, to demonstrate to you that it doesn't have to be about God, but what I learned that would help me spiritually is what would explain where my perspective that life is a mission and why I want to be super productive. Why does it matter that I'm impactful and make impact on the world? There was a time in my life where I didn't care much about what was impactful, and I think I was growing in emotional intelligence, and what was most important at that time for developing my emotional intelligence was understanding what my own feelings are. And then I had a superpower by understanding really well what's going on with my own emotions. I was not only able to manage my own emotions, but my interactions with people, my social skills exploded because of the emotional intelligence I was focused on. That started in high school. And I didn't really care about making impact so much. But there was this underlying desire to be productive, and there was this perspective forming that my life is a mission. And I would grasp onto anything on the outside of me that would reinforce those things. Anything that encouraged me to be productive, anything that helped me be productive, I would grab it. And I would adopt these values that make me feel it was very horrible and wasting time. Like just sitting around not getting stuff done was a waste of time. But at the same time, I was a person who was chill, and I didn't seek adventure. I wanted a slower life. Wanted to enjoy nature. Philosophically, I was talking about how this way of thinking is like existentialism, where I thought there really is no set purpose. There's no real meaning to your life. You don't really discover it. You invent it. You create it. And now I've said some things that are the opposite of that. What I was going through at the time was a lack of purpose. And the existentialism that I was thinking about, the logical side of my brain, the intellectual side of my brain that was using as existentialism as a solution. This way of thinking that said, you're not going to discover what the purpose is. You have to create it. You have to determine it. You have to try to come up with it for yourself. And studying all these things outside of you is not going to give you the answers. You have to see where it's coming from, but what's important to you on the inside, and follow your heart. So that helped me a whole lot. That helped me bring purpose back into my life. What was true at that time, in a later stage in life, when I became clear from looking inward, that the meaning of life is to experience love and happiness. And when you got those two things going well for you, and when you align those things so that they don't contradict each other, when you do something for love, it's also for your happiness. And when you do something for happiness, it's also for your love. And doing something for one of those is not going against, it's not taking away from the other thing, right? Doing something for the love of others doesn't take away from your happiness. Doing something for yourself to make you happy should not take away from loving others. When you find, that takes alignment, right? And when you find the alignment and things are going well in both of those areas, then you have a meaningful life. You have fulfillment. So as life changes, you'll find different ways to work towards more love and happiness. And as a human, I don't know if it's everybody, but for me, there's such thing as enough. But as life progresses, what was enough in the past is no longer enough. Or, sometimes what used to be enough is in excess now. So I'm just kind of analyzing and thinking through that part of my life where I became clear about love and happiness bringing meaning to life. But at the earlier stage, when I was in high school and I didn't have purpose, at this later stage in my mid-20s where I understood purpose and I found words to become clear, and now in my life as a father and thinking about where I'm going next with my professional life, thinking about going into a new career, what has been the same all along is that purpose is important. And what do I mean by that? It means like so in college we studied this in classes. It's philosophical, and it's like when you're thinking about you can have things going well in your life. Like let me backtrack. So when some of your basic needs are not met, you don't have to question what to do. When you're hungry and you need to eat some food, you don't really have to think too much. There's no philosophizing necessary. Physiologically, we typically want to survive. We want to be alive. So since we want to stay alive, our body knows that we need to eat. So we have hunger in place, and our brain will start to gear our focus to getting food. When you have your basic needs met, but you still feel like something is missing, like you don't feel that happy, then you start to wonder, like, what is it that I need? Now, sometimes you understand, like, you need better relationships. Like, even though you're eating, you need to be healthier, maybe better food or more movement, move your body. Sometimes you don't understand, like, mental health issues, right? Like emotional disorders, and you don't even know what's going on with you. You just don't feel good. Okay, then it does take some thinking. It does take some mental work to figure out what it is you got to do. Not like being hungry and you don't even have to wonder what you got to do. You know you need food. So all along, at different stages in my life, the idea of purpose was always there. I always needed purpose. And I think for me growing up, I had all my basic needs met and didn't ever have to think. There was like enough security for my family that I never had to think about a life where I was going to focus on getting my basic needs met. So growing up, I had no choice but to practice thinking about the higher needs. Because my parents would always make sure that my basic needs were met, and I already trusted that to be the case, and I didn't think about it. Whenever I didn't feel good, the thing to work on was the higher needs. So I got good at it. Now, I don't know if that is why, or if it's a coincidence, or it's just my advantage in life, but that is why then the purpose has always been important. And where that came from was like, if my basic needs are met and I still don't feel good, what is the meaning to life? Like, is it just to survive, or is there more? And so philosophers have asked this question. And so in one of my classes when I was in college, we studied what different philosophers would say. And the Greek philosophers had an interesting dialogue about this. They were talking about how when you're thinking about a question like, what is the meaning of life? What makes a life worth living? It's crazy, right? These people were thinking about higher needs way back then. And you see it like with the more advanced civilizations where they can make sure that all the basic needs are met for people, then they have that opportunity to think about these things. And so they said, like, if you take a tool, like any let's say a physical object, like a man-made tool like a hammer, and you say, what is the meaning of a hammer? You're probably asking, like, right, like, what's the purpose of the hammer? And you're thinking, like, well, why does this exist? Why does it exist? Similarly, we ask, like, why do I exist? Or why am I here? Right, but why does this hammer exist? Well, it was created as a tool to drive nails into wood. Let's say that. So then, can we determine what makes a good hammer? Like, it does its job well. If that's the purpose of it, it needs to live up to its purpose, and that's what makes a good hammer. So that type of logic was used to talk about what's a good life. What makes a good life? Well, why do we exist? Why do we have a life in the first place? What is the purpose of our life? So however you answer that question then is how you determine what a good life is. How do you come up with the answer? Like, is it something that you conclude through your reflection? Is it something that you just, like, you make it up? You just choose something to believe in? Or is there a way to observe the world around us? Can science help us arrive to the answer? Or can something metaphysical be at play here? The invisible things that we don't see but are producing forces that push and pull us and ultimately explain why we exist. Very tough to understand, but all along, purpose has been important to me, and I've been thinking about it. And in the book that I'm reading, purpose-driven life, he says basically like the purpose in life is to make a good life. And to explain how you make a good life by serving the greater mechanisms that you are just a part of. You can understand 5 categories of purpose. Now you can be very specific about purpose, but there's 5 categories that any specific description of purpose would fit into either one of these 5 categories. And the first one is about like appreciating, is about just enjoying, celebrating inherent value in the world around us. Pretty much what it is. Like, almost like seeing in a positive light all the things that are outside of your control. Even the things about you that you may feel are out of your control. Things that are in your life that are out of your control. Being able to see all these things in a positive light, the world as it is in a positive light, is like the first category of purpose. The second category of purpose has to do with your relationships. Is doing things for other people without regard to a benefit to yourself. I mean, why is that the case? Were we designed by a creator to be that way? Is this an evolutionary trait that grew into our species and helped us survive all these years? And so those of us who find fulfillment in loving relationships are the ones who are still around today, as opposed to the ones who didn't. You know, I don't know why that's true as a purpose of life, but it is the case. And so for somebody who disagrees with me, they may not have that inherent desire to have loving relationships, which is crazy. But the truth I'm speaking about applies in my life and applies to many other people. So loving others is the second category. The third category is to develop yourself spiritually, to develop yourself based on what non-physical things are important. So when you think about like loving relationships, you're already starting to touch on some of the non-physical things that are important. Like a relationship is not a physical thing. The other person that you have a relationship with could be like a sibling, could be parents, could be any other family member, could be a romantic relationship, could be friends, like peers and friends. The other people that you have relationships with are physical things. They're as people. Their body is physical, but the relationship itself between you is something non-physical. It's like the collection of your interactions. It's like what makes your history together. What makes the history that you two have together mean something in your brain and in your feelings. So the relationship is non-physical. So you already start to step into that in the second category of purpose. But there's other things. I mean, when you experience, somebody may argue that all emotions are happening in the brain, or like the brain is what's causing you to experience emotions. But when you have the experience, you're not like, oh yeah, that feels good. A happy emotion is not, that feels good on my brain. Like, if you massage a muscle, oh, that feels good on my arm or my back. But when you do something and that gives you good emotion, you're not like, oh, that feels good on my brain. Nah, you feel it kind of like deeper. You feel it non-physical. You feel it like, that feels good in my life. That feels good for my soul. And so then you start to know that there are things that are important that are non-physical. So when you start to live according to those things more and more, you will shape your character. And that is the third category of purpose: spiritual maturity. You don't need to believe in God, but spirituality is a real thing. The fourth category is about sharing your gifts and talents with others, to serve others. So, like, taking what you can control, your abilities to do something, your influence on the world, right? And using that to serve others. There's the fourth category. The fifth category is to then share with others this concept that our purpose is already there, and it's kind of been put there by these 5 categories. Finding your unique purpose is, how do you live in each category? How do you express in each category? That's how you find your unique purpose. All right, so I want to share that because in that idea that there's these 5 categories of purpose, I'm able to understand where this underlying desire to maximize my productivity is coming from. I'm also able to understand, why do I see my life as a mission? And so I'm connecting the dots. And intellectually, I may have not known, but in my heart, in my soul, I felt it. That I'm supposed to live for more. Why do I care to make impact on this world? Because I kind of already felt that my purpose was to love others, to do things, to serve other people, to think about the non-physical things. So I discovered how to say it. I discovered how to think about it intellectually. But so I didn't really invent it. But then I have more questions. I'm like, in each of these categories, how do I make sure that I'm fulfilled? How do I make sure I'm living out my purpose? How do I express in each of these 5 categories? And I think it's like the puzzle. It's like, okay, I got some progress solving this puzzle, but now I got more challenges to work through. Is it possible that the God-given purpose, is it possible that the purpose that was already set for me is not that specific, as long as I'm hitting the 5 categories, that I have a purpose-driven life? Is it possible that I do invent, I do create the specifics, the unique purpose that I'm trying to find, I think it's very possible. So right now, for example, I'm hungry. I'm not starving, but all I had to eat today was like this protein smoothie. I've been up since 5, something like that, maybe a little earlier actually. And then I had a protein smoothie. I had a little bit of trail mix, protein bar, and a banana. But now it's almost 1:30. It's time for lunch, so I know I'm gonna need to eat. I'm hungry. And when we're thinking about basic needs, right? And let's say like basic needs, I need to eat, and I need to go to the bathroom. I've been on a long drive, so I need to go to the bathroom. That's for sure. That's easy. So that's easy to know. Like, what am I gonna work on next? Then what? What do I work on next? I don't have to immediately do anything for my employer, which is nice. They may try to press on me, but I do have a little buffer. So I'm gonna see what else I want to get to now. I'm dealing with, I wish I could keep talking. I spent 30 minutes just handling all this about purpose, but I'm gonna need to prioritize things. I've discussed what some of my priorities are. Like, number one in my life right now, like number one priority has been to provide financial security for my family. And I'm talking about my immediate family at home, my wife and kids. Oh, you know what? I'm going now. I'm talking to the other car. I'm trying to let them go. So I'm talking, thinking about my number one priority, providing financial security for my family. I stay committed to my current employer because it's like a guaranteed way to make money. So if I can keep a very healthy income by keeping this commitment to my employer, then I know I'll provide financial security to my family. So I know that I'll cover my first purpose. Oh, this kid's gonna steal my spot. There's gonna be enough space for both of us to park, I think. So they better scoot all the way back. Nah, I think she's scooting all the way back. She's gonna think everything.